The desperate call ambassador Thylex pressed his 6 arms against the control panel of the emergency beacon. His insectoid features twitched with stress as he composed what might be the Zanari Collective's final message to the galaxy. Around him, the command center of Nexus Prime buzzed with panicked activity as beings from 47 different species worked desperately to coordinate their failing defense. The view screen showed the horror approaching their core systems. Black clouds of mechanical death swept through space, consuming everything in their path. Ships, stations, entire moons disappeared into those writhing masses of metal and energy. The Void Swarm had returned after 10,000 years of silence, and this time they seemed unstoppable. "Ambassador, the outer colonies are gone," reported Commander Zeph, a crystalline being whose body normally shone with blue light. Now those crystals flickered weakly, dimmed by exhaustion and fear. 17 worlds in the past week. At this rate, we have perhaps 2 months before they reach our homeworlds. Thylex nodded grimly. The Zanari Collective had faced many challenges in their long history. They had survived economic collapses, natural disasters, even the occasional dispute between member species. But they had always found solutions through cooperation and careful negotiation. The Void Swarm offered no opportunity for either. These mechanical parasites consumed organic matter to fuel their reproduction. They showed no interest in communication, negotiation, or mercy. They simply arrived, harvested everything alive, and moved on to the next system. The few survivors who escaped their attack spoke of machines that adapted to every defense, overcame every strategy, and learned from every encounter. "What about our fleet?" Thylex asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Admiral Korth tried to make a stand at the Gemini gates," Zeph replied. 200 ships, our best commanders, every weapon we could deploy. The swarm consumed them all in less than 4 hours. The ambassador's compound eyes reflected the tactical display showing their defensive positions. Red markers indicated confirmed swarm locations. Yellow showed areas under attack, and the rapidly shrinking green zones represented their remaining territory. It painted a picture of inevitable defeat. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Vex from the communications station. The young Aquarian's tentacles moved frantically over his controls. "We're receiving responses to our general distress call." Thylex felt a flutter of hope. "How many species are offering assistance?" 14 have sent supplies and medical aid, Vex reported. "But sir, most are requesting evacuation to their territories. They want us to abandon our worlds and become refugees." The hope died as quickly as it had come. Thylex understood the logic. The Void Swarm had proven unstoppable for 10 millennia. The smart choice was to flee and hope the machines would be satisfied with consuming the collective's territory. But these worlds held the history and culture of 47 species. To abandon them meant losing everything that made them who they were. "What about military assistance?" Commander Zeph asked. "The Altarian Republic is sending a squadron of ships," Vex replied. "The Hegemony is offering 3 destroyers. Combined with our remaining fleet, we might have 50 combat vessels. Against a swarm that had already consumed thousands of ships, 50 more would make no difference." Thylex slumped in his command chair, feeling the weight of billions of lives depending on decisions he was powerless to make. "Sir," Vex said suddenly, his voice carrying a note of surprise, "there's one more response. From a species called humans. I don't recognize them in our databases." "Humans?" Zeph's crystalline body brightened slightly. "I think I remember something. They're from a small system on the galaxy's outer rim. Recently discovered very primitive technology. They probably don't even understand the situation." "What do they say?" Thylex asked, grasping at any straw of hope. Vex activated the message. The holographic display showed a middle-aged female, with dark skin and kind eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform that looked more like merchant clothing than military gear. "Greetings to the Zanari Collective," the human said in accented but clear Galactic standard. "I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the cargo vessel Esperanza. We received your distress signal and understand you're facing some kind of mechanical threat to your colonies." The human paused, consulting what appeared to be a data pad. We're just a small cargo ship, but we carry emergency supplies and medical equipment. We can be at your location in 6 days. We've also forwarded your message to Earth Command. They said they'll send whatever help they can." The message ended, leaving the command center in silence. Thylex appreciated the gesture, but a single cargo ship would make no meaningful difference against the void swarm. "At least someone cares enough to try," Zeph said quietly. "Patch me through to this Captain Rodriguez," Thylex ordered. "We should thank her for her concern, even if her help won't change our fate." The connection took several minutes to establish across the vast distances of space. When Captain Rodriguez appeared on screen, she was clearly aboard a working vessel. Behind her, Thylex could see crew members of her species moving equipment and checking systems. "Ambassador Thylex," she said with a slight bow. "We're honored to help however we can. Our cargo includes medical nanobots, portable fusion reactors, and defensive shield generators. It's not much, but it's yours if you need it." "Captain Rodriguez," Thylex replied, "your generosity means more than you know. But I must be honest with you. The enemy we face has destroyed fleets of hundreds of ships. Your single vessel, however brave, cannot make a difference in this conflict." The human captain nodded seriously. "We understand the odds, Ambassador. That's why Earth Command is sending additional support." Additional support. Thylex didn't want to hurt her feelings by explaining that even a dozen primitive human ships would be meaningless against the void swarm. "How many ships is your government sending?" he asked gently. Captain Rodriguez smiled, and for a moment her expression reminded Thylex of a predator showing its teeth. "All of them, sir. The entire Earth Defense Force is being deployed to your location." Before Thylex could respond, his communications officer called out urgently, "Ambassador, long-range sensors are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching our system." "Large signatures?" The tactical display updated, showing dozens of new contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Then dozens more. The number kept climbing until Thylex stopped counting at 300. "Captain Rodriguez," he said slowly, "exactly how many ships does Earth have?" "This deployment includes 847 vessels," she replied matter-of-factly. "Battleships, carriers, destroyers, support ships, and mobile battle stations. Admiral Chen wanted to bring more, but this is what we could mobilize on short notice." Short notice. 800 ships on short notice. Thylex's compound eyes struggled to process what he was seeing. The human fleet approaching their system was larger than anything the collective had ever assembled. "Captain," Commander Zeph interjected, his crystals now glowing brightly with excitement, "your species must be incredibly advanced to maintain such a massive fleet." Rodriguez looked puzzled. "Advanced? We're barely 50 years into space travel. Most of our technology is pretty basic compared to what we've seen from other species. But when someone needs help, you send what you have. 847 ships as basic help." Thylex began to realize that his species might have seriously underestimated these humans. The tactical display updated again as the human fleet formed up at the system's edge. Their ships looked different from anything in Galactic standard designs, where most species built vessels for exploration, trade, or defense. These ships were clearly built for one purpose: war. Heavy armor plating covered angular hulls, weapon ports dotted every surface. Launch bays for smaller craft opened like hungry mouths. These weren't the ships of a peaceful civilization. They were the tools of a species that had learned to fight and fight well. "Ambassador," Captain Rodriguez said, "Admiral Chen will be contacting you shortly to coordinate our defense of your worlds. But I want you to know something. When humans give their word to help, we don't do it halfway." The transmission ended, leaving Thylex staring at the display showing the largest military fleet in recorded galactic history. All of it sent by a species that considered themselves primitive, all of it deployed to help people they had never met. "Sir," Vex called out, "Admiral Chen is requesting permission to establish a tactical network with our remaining fleet." "Granted," Thylex replied, still trying to process what was happening. "And Vex, send a message to all collective worlds. Tell them that hope has arrived and it flies under human flags." As the human fleet moved deeper into the system, their formation was a thing of deadly beauty. ships arranged in perfect attack formations, support vessels protected by walls of firepower, and at the center, massive dreadnoughts that looked capable of cracking planets. The Void Swarm was approaching fast, consuming everything in their path. But for the first time in weeks, Thylex allowed himself to believe that his people might survive. The humans had answered their call for simple aid by sending the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. Soon, the machines would learn what happened when they threatened something humanity had chosen to protect. The Human Response Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Invictus, studying the holographic displays that showed the approaching Void Swarm. His weathered face showed no emotion as he watched the mechanical tide that had consumed 17 worlds in the past week. Behind him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their voices creating a low hum of controlled activity. "Status report," Chen ordered. "Fleet formation complete, sir," reported Commander Sarah Park from the tactical station. 847 ships in attack formation. All vessels report ready for combat operations. Chen nodded. The Earth Defense Force had been preparing for something like this since humanity first learned they weren't alone in the galaxy. Every war game, every simulation, every strategic planning session had been building toward the moment when they would face an existential threat to intelligent life. The communication system activated, and Ambassador Thylex appeared on the main screen. The insectoid alien's compound eyes reflected stress and barely contained hope. "Admiral Chen," Thylex said, "our long-range sensors show the Void Swarm will reach our defensive perimeter in 18 hours. Our remaining fleet stands ready to coordinate with your forces." Chen studied the tactical display showing the Zanari positions. 50 ships arranged in a traditional defensive formation, designed to delay the enemy while civilians evacuated. It was a strategy based on buying time, not winning battles. "Ambassador, with respect, your current formation won't be effective against this enemy," Chen said diplomatically. "We recommend your fleet fall back to the second defensive line while we engage the swarm directly." Thylex's antennae twitched with confusion. "Admiral, surely you don't intend to attack them head-on? Every species that has tried direct confrontation has been consumed completely." "Every species hasn't been human," Chen replied. "We've studied the swarm's attack patterns from your tactical records. They're adaptive, but predictable. They rely on overwhelming numbers and energy absorption. Our approach will be different." The truth was that humanity had been fighting mechanical enemies for decades. The AI wars of 2157 had taught them how machines thought, how they adapted, and most importantly, how they could be destroyed. The galaxy's peaceful species had never learned these lessons because they had never needed to. "Admiral, Commander," Park announced, "swarm contact in 6 hours. They're moving faster than expected." Chen turned to the fleet communications officer. "Signal all ships, Battle Plan Omega. Inform all captains that we are weapons-free upon enemy contact." Throughout the human fleet, massive ships began final preparations for battle. Weapon systems that had been designed to crack asteroids and level cities powered up to full capacity. Fighters and bombers prepared to launch from carrier bays. Marines checked their equipment for boarding operations that the peaceful galaxy couldn't even imagine. Ambassador Thylex watched these preparations with growing amazement. The humans weren't positioning for defense or retreat. They were arranging their fleet for attack, as if they intended to hunt down and destroy an enemy that had proven unstoppable for 10,000 years. "Admiral Chen," Thylex said carefully, "our records show that the Void Swarm adapts to every weapon used against it. They learn from each encounter and become stronger." Chen smiled grimly. "Ambassador, adaptation requires survival. Our strategy doesn't give them that opportunity." The human admiral activated his fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Today we face an enemy that threatens innocent lives across the galaxy. They believe strength comes from consumption and numbers. They're about to learn that real strength comes from those willing to sacrifice everything to protect others." On the tactical display, the Void Swarm appeared as a massive cloud of red signatures. Thousands of mechanical entities moved in perfect coordination, their formation designed to envelop and consume everything they encountered. Contact in 30 minutes, Commander Park announced. Swarm is maintaining standard approach pattern. Launch all fighters, Chen ordered. Bomber wings are to target the swarm's energy distribution nodes. Battleships will focus fire on heavy units. Carriers will provide covering fire and tactical support. The space around the human fleet filled with smaller craft as hundreds of fighters and bombers launched from their carriers. Unlike the peaceful designs of galactic civilization, these ships were built for one purpose: destroying enemy forces as efficiently as possible. Ambassador Thylex watched in fascination as the Eider human fleet transformed from a defensive formation into an offensive weapon. Ships that had seemed large and intimidating now revealed their true nature as part of a coordinated killing machine. Admiral, Thylex said, "Are all human fleets this aggressive?" "This isn't aggression, Ambassador," Chen replied. "This is precision. We studied your records of every swarm encounter for the past week. We know their weaknesses." The Void Swarm approached, their mechanical forms gleaming with absorbed energy from countless consumed worlds. Individual units the size of frigates moved in perfect synchronization, their surfaces covered with energy collectors and processing nodes. "Sir," Commander Park called out, "the swarm is attempting to establish energy drain fields. They're trying to disable our power systems." "Activate EMP hardening," Chen ordered. "All ships, switch to secondary power systems. They can't drain what they can't access." The first wave of human fighters engaged the swarm's outer perimeter. Instead of the expected energy weapons, the fighters fired solid projectiles at incredible velocities. Kinetic rounds punched through the machine's adaptive shielding, causing explosions that rippled through their formation. "Kinetic weapons," Chen explained to the amazed ambassador. "They can adapt to energy patterns, but they can't adapt to a chunk of metal traveling at significant fractions of light speed." The human bombers followed up with weapons that Thylex couldn't identify. Instead of explosions, entire sections of the swarm simply stopped functioning, drifting dead in space. "EMP warheads," Commander Park reported. "Electromagnetic pulse weapons designed specifically for fighting mechanical enemies. Direct hit on their central processing cluster." What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The humans didn't try to contain or disable their enemy. They systematically destroyed every mechanical unit they encountered using weapons and tactics specifically designed to eliminate artificial intelligence. The Void Swarm, for the first time in 10,000 years, found itself unable to adapt. Every countermeasure they deployed was met by a human countermeasure. Every formation they tried was anticipated and exploited. "Admiral," Thylex said in amazement, "they're actually losing." "They were always going to lose," Chen replied. "The moment they threatened innocent people, their fate was sealed." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the space where the Void Swarm had approached was filled with debris and dead mechanical hulks. Not a single human ship had been lost, though several showed damage from the fighting. "All ships report," Commander Park announced. "Minimal casualties, no total losses. The Void Swarm has been completely eliminated." Ambassador Thylex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. An enemy that had consumed 17 worlds and threatened the entire collective had been destroyed by the humans in a single engagement. "Admiral Chen," Thylex said slowly, "how did you know how to fight them?" Chen's expression grew serious. "Ambassador, humans have been fighting artificial intelligences for over a century. We've learned that the key to defeating machines isn't superior technology or bigger weapons. It's understanding that they think differently than organic life." "But your response," Thylex continued, "we asked for simple aid. A few ships, maybe some supplies. You sent your entire military." "Ambassador," Chen replied, "when someone asks humanity for help, we don't do it halfway. You needed protection, so we brought protection. You needed the swarm stopped, so we stopped it." The communication activated again, this time showing Captain Rodriguez from the cargo ship that had first responded to their distress call. "Admiral Chen," she said with a smile, "the Esperanza has finished distributing emergency supplies to the refugee stations. Medical teams are reporting good progress with the survivors. Thank you, Captain, Chen replied. What's your assessment of long-term needs? The Zanari are resilient people, Rodriguez reported. With some help rebuilding their infrastructure and establishing new defensive systems, they should recover. Well, Thylex realized that while the military had been destroying the Void Swarm, human civilian ships had been quietly providing exactly the kind of aid the collective had originally requested. The humans hadn't just sent help. They had sent complete, overwhelming assistance. Admiral, Thylex asked, will your fleet remain to help with reconstruction? Chen nodded. Our engineering corps will assist with rebuilding. Our medical teams will help with refugee relocation, and will establish a monitoring station to watch for any remaining swarm activity. Why? Thylex asked. We're strangers to you. Our species had never even met before this crisis. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars where human ships were already beginning rescue and recovery operations. Ambassador, he said finally, humans have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. When we received your distress call, we had a choice. We could send minimal help and hope for the best, or we could send everything we had and guarantee your survival. The choice was never difficult, Chen continued. When someone asks humanity for help protecting innocent lives, they get everything we have. That's not just our military doctrine. That's who we are. As the human fleet settled into defensive positions around collective space, Thylex began to understand that his species had encountered something unprecedented. They had found a civilization that measured strength not by what they could take, but by what they were willing to give. The Void Swarm was gone, destroyed by beings who had turned warfare into an art form. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned that sometimes the greatest kindness required the greatest strength, and that when push came to shove, humanity would always choose to push back. In the days that followed, human engineers would rebuild shattered worlds. Human doctors would heal the wounded. Human teachers would share their knowledge freely. But the galaxy would always remember that when asked for simple aid, humanity had sent a fleet. Because that's what you do for family. And in the humans' eyes, all sentient life was family worth protecting.